All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for making your way back. We are about to kick off the next session, so I'll hand it over to our media team for a countdown, and then we will kick off. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your tea break. I hope you made some meaningful connections and had some great conversations. I know some of you are feeling like, why is she calling us back now, just when the sun came out? But you'll thank me later because the sun has actually disappeared. And I'll tell you why. So I'm Kalenjin, and in Kalenjin, the name Chebet means born during the day when the sun is shining. So typically, child of the sun, so we have a special relationship. Don't worry, over lunch I'm gonna just make sure you get sun again. So we are now getting into the final session of our closeout event, and we will start this particular one by watching a video. We've had so much about Kim's impact and results, and for now we will play a short video that will just run us through the numbers.
USAID's Kenya investment mechanism has been connecting business opportunities with financing. We created a network of 42 business advisory service providers who we incentivize to help enterprises access financing. We also worked with 22 local financial institutions, providing incentives to serve SMEs. We also supported them with new financing products that better fit the cash collection cycles of businesses. Additionally, we deepened their understanding of the importance of value chain financing. By mid-July 2023, USAID's Kenya investment mechanism had mobilized over $636 million in finance and investment for enterprises, way above the target of $520 million. This capital supported close to 9 million smallholders and 450 SMEs. Our pool of business advisory service providers mobilized over $293 million, while financial institutions mobilized over $313 million. Through institutional investors working under the Kenya Pension Funds Investment Consortium, or KEPFIC, we mobilized close to $30 million. Kenya investment mechanism supported key sectors of the economy, such as agriculture, energy, health, as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene, that is WASH. We were intentional about scaling women and youth entrepreneurs' access to financing. Of the total capital mobilized, $58.6 million went to women business owners, while $14.4 million supported youth entrepreneurs. Kenya Investment Mechanism had an intentional focus on companies that align with Prosper Africa Initiative's goals, such as promoting two-way trade and investment between Africa and the US, supporting economic growth, and advancing sustainable development. Our support to Prosper Africa resulted in $249.5 million in new funding, for 32 US Nexus companies across Kenya and East Africa. The new capital injection into these US Nexus companies has contributed to job creation, increased trade, and economic growth in the region. We are grateful to our partners for working with us in this journey of connecting business opportunities with financing.
All right, and now we will get into our first keynote presentation. I'd like to welcome Ngatia Kirungie, who's head of the KEPFIC Secretariat, and he will be taking us through the Kenya Pension Investment Consortium, an organization Kim supported to establish. I would like to introduce him first before he makes his way up on stage. Ngatia is a founder and managing director of Spearhead Africa, a Nairobi-based infrastructure and alternative investment advisory business, and the head of the Kenya Pension Fund Investment Consortium, that's KEPFIC, the secretariat. He has extensive experience from large financial institutions in New York, London, and Nairobi. Prior to founding Spearhead Africa, Ngatia was an executive director at Goldman Sachs in London, where he led the firm's Africa fixed income sales and credit coverage and was responsible for leading financing and public market investment transactions valued at over $5 billion. Ngatia holds an MBA from Vanderbilt University, a BSc in International Business Administration from USIU Africa, oh, that's my alumni, and 2019 Obama Foundation Africa Leader. Let's give him a warm round of applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much to our hosts, the Kenya Investment Mechanism, for having us here today. As you have heard, KEPFIC is one of the initiatives that Kim has supported from our very inception. And we wouldn't be where we are today without the support of Roger and the team at Kim. Before I start off on my presentation, I think it's important for us to have a little bit of background as to what we are looking to achieve, what we have done so far, and what was the initial idea behind KEPFIC. And we have a video that we launched, that we used at our launch. This was in 2020, if you can recall. We spent many hours with George working on this with multiple cuts, multiple different iterations. And but I think it summarizes quite well what we have been doing, and it will give you a good sense of what I'll speak to in our presentation. So I think the presentation is loaded up.
In the search for optimal returns, Kenyan pension funds, like those the world over, continue to scout for profitable and impactful investment opportunities. While most pension funds have traditionally invested in government securities and blue-chip stocks, investments in infrastructure and other alternative asset classes present an innovative, profitable, and long-term sustainable opportunity. The Kenya Pension Funds Investment Consortium, KEPFIC, is a consortium of Kenyan retirement benefit funds that have come together to make long-term infrastructure and alternative asset investments in the region. Infrastructure investments offer attractive returns, portfolio diversification benefits, and match long-term assets to long-term liabilities. And over the next 5 years, KEPFIC aims to mobilize $250 million from Kenyan pension funds and offshore co-investors for investment in impactful infrastructure assets. To do this, KEPFIC aims to identify suitable infrastructure opportunities, pool investment capital from local pension funds and co-investors, and build the technical and investment capacity of our member funds to enable them to make informed infrastructure investment decisions.
Infrastructure, by its very nature, is a very complex investment class. It requires costly due diligence and research, and the amounts required, or the ticket sizes, are beyond the capacities and regulatory limits for individual pension funds. And indeed, when you look at the pension fund industry in Kenya, we have 1,300 pension funds, and most of these are too small, and even the larger ones would struggle to invest in infrastructure on their own.
Kenya faces a significant infrastructure financing deficit estimated at $2.1 billion annually, a deficit that cannot be met by public resources alone. While historically infrastructure has been the domain of national and county governments, there is a significant opportunity for private sector participation as more private capital seeks longer-term steady returns, while governments are faced with much-needed competing priorities such as healthcare, food security, and education. Infrastructure presents an attractive yet underutilized investment opportunity for pension funds, and the involvement of private institutions will not only contribute to Kenya's economic growth and transformation as a whole, but also to better project governance structures by adopting global best practices. Thanks to a recent provision in the Retirement Benefits Authority investment guidelines, Kenyan pension funds can now invest up to 10% of their assets into infrastructure, effectively unlocking over $1 billion into the asset class.
We have recently amended our investment guidelines to allow schemes to invest a portion of their assets in infrastructure. We are therefore very supportive of KEFIC's mission to bring together different pension schemes and other stakeholders which are keen on investing in this area of infrastructure, and is also bringing together other stakeholders to develop the infrastructure investment agenda.
KEPFIC was recognized as the Pension Fund Infrastructure Initiative of the Year at the 2019 Africa Investor Awards held in Cape Town, South Africa, further validating its mission and shining a brighter light on the East Africa infrastructure investment opportunity globally. The consortium has also received technical support from USAID and the World Bank to help local member funds navigate the infrastructure investment terrain, and by working with the mobilizing institutional investors to develop Africa's Infrastructure Initiative (MIDA), KEPFIC has further leveraged its mission and established a partnership with US-based pension funds with total assets under management in excess of $1 trillion to explore infrastructure co-investment opportunities in the region.
KEFIC presents an innovative approach to investments that will catalyze critically needed sources of private sector capital for infrastructure development. This comes at a time when national and county governments are facing growing budget deficits and competing priorities in healthcare, affordable housing, education, and food security. USAID's Kenyan Investment Mechanism is pleased to partner with Kenya Pension Fund Investment Consortium to support this expanded source of new capital.
MIDA Advisors has been supporting KEFIC in the creation of a local consortium of pension funds to invest in infrastructure. We're working under the umbrella of the U.S. Agency for International Development. Our goal is to support a strong partnership between American pension funds and Kenyan pension funds. And American pension funds need a critical partner in the region, and like-minded investors that are working for the benefit of its retirees and that are looking to undertake economically important projects in infrastructure, in housing, supporting job creation and economic development in the region.
By joining KEPFIC, pension funds will participate in infrastructure investments and enjoy several benefits such as economies of scale in the infrastructure investment selection, structuring, and due diligence processes, capacity building through live deal analysis and project site tours, regular investment workshops with experts in infrastructure investment, and networking sessions with like-minded local and foreign pension funds, co-investments with global pension funds, technical support from implementation partners in the investment selection and execution process, and finally, advocacy efforts by representing its members' interests in regular engagements with regulators and external stakeholders and contributing to supportive policy measures.
Investing in infrastructure for us is an interesting asset class because it provides an opportunity for us to make a difference in the development of our country as well as other regions. What we benefit by working together as KEPFIC is access to knowledge, access to risk management, and access to partnership with other like-minded investment vehicles.
KEPFIC, mobilizing institutional capital for impactful infrastructure investments.
So that was the promise that we made in 2020 when we were being launched. And I must say, it's been a while since I've watched that video. And it's quite impressive, eh? And it also covers like 50% of my presentation. So so it means I won't be up here for too long. But we can have my presentation up. The focus that we'll now spend really the next couple of minutes on is really to highlight how Kim has helped us along this journey. You've seen already what they did in terms of putting together that video for our launch, but now I want to show specifically how all those promises have been met and we continue to achieve together with, through their support. Firstly, the clicker. Okay, so first of all, just a little bit of background. When we talk about alternative assets, the first question that we always have to clarify, always have to answer is just what are they? Now, these are essentially investments in non-traditional areas. So not the stocks and bonds that we're all quite familiar with. We're looking at areas such as infrastructure, as you have seen, private equity, private debt, venture capital, and the likes. So these are areas of investment that you'd find that our pension schemes have traditionally not been participating in. And why are these investment opportunities attractive for the pension schemes? For these reasons that you can see in front of you. First, they have competitive returns. If you know diversification, and I'll talk about diversification quite a bit, we looked at the latest statistics the other day, and 92% of pension scheme assets are in stocks and bonds. And when you think about stocks, they're just a handful of names. You know them all. Safaricom, KCB, Equity Bank, a few others. What that means is that should anything happen to those three companies, for example, if the share price goes down, what that means, what that results in is really poor performance for the pension industry as a whole. And that's not theoretical. The effect of that is not just theoretical. What happens as a result is the pensioners who are expecting a certain amount of money every month from after working 30 years very diligently, now receive less. And so as pension schemes, given the fact that we are mandated to be good stewards of pension money, seeking diversification is very, very critical. And then we look at the fact that these investments are often long-term in nature, but that could scare other investors away, but not us, because we as pension schemes have a long-term horizon. So we can easily match an investment of 20 years, for example, against our own liabilities, the pension payments that will be required in 20 years. So we are a natural partner, we are a natural investor in some of these opportunities. And lastly is inflation. If you're thinking about investing long-term, one of your biggest risks is that the returns that you think are good today will be less tomorrow and in the future because of inflation. But when you look at infrastructure opportunities, the returns are often linked to inflation. So if inflation goes up, so do our returns, and net-net, we remain in the same position. So these are four big boxes that were ticked for us to start looking very seriously at alternatives. Now, I mentioned diversification. This is important because you can see that the size of our industry, at least the pension scheme industry right now, is about 1.6 trillion shillings. And that's expected to double in the next 5 years. But I've just said that we have a handful, we only have very limited investment options. So where are we going to put the extra 1.6 trillion that's going to come in the next 5 years? We certainly cannot put it, we certainly can't put it all into government bonds, as you can see here. Government bonds are about 76%. We certainly can't put it all into Safaricom and these equities, which contribute 16%. Property, we're looking at property as KEPFIC because it is one of the alternative assets. We're seeing that it represents about 6%. And then there's offshore, which is 2%. And these challenges, I think, can all be summarized into investor preparation. Now, millions, if not tens of millions of dollars are spent every year on project preparation. And these are the project feasibility studies that you find the project promoters put together to ensure that the projects are viable. And that is certainly very, very important. But if you have a project that has, if all the focus is being put on project preparation, and the projects are ready, but when you say they're ready, but they're not investor ready, or at least the investors themselves are not at the point where they can invest in these projects, then it's for nothing. Yeah, you end up having stacks upon stacks of feasibility studies that sit and gather dust, and the outcome of those feasibility studies in the long run was to mobilize capital. But if the investors are not ready for that, then you will never reach your goal. So investor preparation really involved us addressing these 4 challenges. So the first challenge that we looked at, or the first challenge that we kept hearing about, as to why pension schemes weren't investing in infrastructure opportunities specifically, is that they had limited awareness of those opportunities in the first place. And that's not a surprise. Very rarely would you find someone who is constructing a road project or a hospital project going to knock on the doors of the local pension schemes. Pension schemes were just not seen as a viable source of financing. These project promoters would go and knock on the doors of the banks and the DFIs and leave us alone, which worked for some time, and I'm sure some transactions did close that way, but it really did not maximize what we could do together with the project sponsors. And so what would happen is that these pension schemes would only see these opportunities once they have been signed, and in the newspaper you see the photo and you see that DFI X has invested in project Y. But even if we were aware of these opportunities, we had limited investment expertise. It's one thing to invest in a government bond where the cash flows are very simple, you understand that. It's one thing to invest in Safaricom where you top up your mobile units every day. But it's another to invest in a road project. It's another thing to invest in a power plant. And so without that investment expertise, what you'd find is that these projects would come to the pension schemes, and you look at them, you can't tell heads from tails. What is important, what isn't. The third point was these opportunities are just really large. You heard on the video that we have 1,300 pension schemes, so we're highly fragmented. That 1.6 trillion, divide that by 1,300 pension schemes, and you can see that there are very few large pension schemes, but there are very many small ones. But these small pension schemes, just because you're small, doesn't mean that you don't face the same challenges as the rest, as the larger ones. You need to have competitive returns, you need diversification. But given the size of the opportunities, it was very difficult for a smaller pension scheme to invest in such a large project, or such large opportunities. So we had to address that. How can we pool the investment capital of the pension schemes such that they can together invest into these opportunities? And the last point was regulatory uncertainty. This was critical because at the end of the day, no one wants to fall foul of the regulator. The regulator is there to ensure that the pension schemes stick to their mandate, no funny business, and that the pension contributors are the ultimate beneficiaries of a prudent investment policy. So, like I mentioned, this is where Kim came in, and I want to take you through the journey of KEPFIC and Kim. The rest of my presentation will really just be explaining this slide in different ways. So, KEPFIC 2018, the idea of 5 like-minded pension schemes that sat together and said, our returns are terrible, we need to do more. Why don't we start looking at more than just stocks and bonds? But there was no way for them to do that until Kim came to the picture. And so Kim's support came in around 2019. And the first thing Kim did is they hired my firm, Spearhead Africa, to be the full-time external secretariat of the initiative. And so this would allow an independent party to really bring to life the idea that what was once just a good idea. Now, in 2020, we had a number of significant milestones. So between 2019 and 2020, we were preparing for a number of things. The first is that regulatory uncertainty piece that I mentioned. So in 2020, we worked with the National Treasury and were able to get infrastructure introduced as a distinct asset class for pension schemes to invest in. And so what this did, it allowed the pension schemes to have some certainty, to have some comfort that the regulator would be comfortable with them investing into that asset class. And as you saw in the video, the CEO of the Retirement Benefits Authority was a very big champion of ours, and the current CEO remains the same. And then once we had done that, we were in a position to actually make a splash and to launch. So this was October 2020. We'll talk about it. I'll talk about it shortly. We had our launch in 2021. By that point, we were able to grow our membership from the 5 that were initially there to 25 with assets over $5 billion. 2022, working with Kim, we realized there was a gap. We hadn't yet finished our work. Yeah, we had some areas that could have been improved in our operations. Firstly, our corporate governance and our sustainability. Kim supported us coming to develop a corporate governance framework as well as a sustainability strategy to prepare us to walk on our own feet. Yeah? We had some investment success in 2022, mobilizing over $100 million at the time. And Kim also supported us to upskill the Secretariat on matters such as environmental, social, and governance investing, so we can be at the forefront of this trend. And in 2023, when you combine all those things, we were confident enough to go to the market with a call for investment proposals, and we developed a pipeline of over $5 billion. Next slide. So let's start with 2020. You can see that the launch, we had it at Movenpick Hotel. We had some very high-level speakers at the time. The keynote speaker was the US ambassador, as well as the PS National Treasury. This tells you the level of support that KEPFIC had, especially if you think about the KEPFIC from the perspective of national government, who are facing competing priorities. So we all hear about how government is fully stretched right now, and they are pulling back from some of the previous areas that they would fund, but we see that as an opportunity for us. And so did the government at the time, and so does the government today. As you heard from Patricia, she was also a keynote speaker at our conference last week, so thank you again, Patricia. And so we got started with a bang. I told you about the regulations that were amended to introduce infrastructure. Down there, you can see 10% can go into infrastructure and affordable housing. And then next slide. And then I mentioned that we grew as a result of that. Now, we had something credible to go to member pensions, to go to the market, to pension schemes, and tell them, come join us on this journey. This is just a snapshot. This by no means is the entire list of KEPFIC members. But what I want to highlight here is the composition, the diversity. It is both public and private sector pension schemes, both large and small. You can see some of the largest ones there. You can see, I think there's NSSF down there at the bottom. But you also have much smaller schemes present with us as well. Many people think that KEPFIC was set up just for public pension schemes. Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, like I mentioned, a pension scheme is a pension scheme, regardless of whether the promoter or the sponsor is from the public sector or not. They have responsibilities, the same responsibilities across the board. So that was extremely critical that we have a diverse membership base. I mentioned corporate governance. So we've launched. The regulations are in place. We have membership. Yeah, we have started to look at opportunities. But when it comes to investing, one of the first things you look at is, who am I partnering with? If you don't trust the person you're partnering with, you certainly will never invest. So one very important milestone, and I would say it was extremely critical for our current and ongoing success, was beefing up our corporate governance structure. And where we came from, remember, KEPFIC was generated as a good idea. Yeah, but now we had to formalize ourselves as a viable and trustworthy initiative if we were to really raise any money. So through KIM, they helped us improve our corporate governance and helped us to stand on our own 2 feet, as you can see. On the corporate governance side, the key areas that we focused on were the responsibilities of the board, the appointment and the composition of the same board, a conflict of interest policy to make sure that there shouldn't be any conflict of interest, transparency, accountability, and disclosures. Remember, we're dealing with public money, it's important, and then importantly, corporate citizenship. And the results of that were, as of beginning of this year, we had our latest AGM where we had a fully elected board of directors for the first time, where we had KEPFIC members actually saying, these are our representatives, not these are the people who were there when we came. So that allowed now KEPFIC to truly be owned by the pension scheme community, not by the secretariat, not by KIM, not by the founders, but by the current members. It also increased the confidence of our stakeholders, the Fund Management Association, the trustees themselves, the administrators, and the likes. Now they knew that this is not a clique of individuals that have come to do something interesting, but now they could actually see through to our disclosures, our corporate governance, and the likes. Now, we always knew that KIM would not be with us forever. And we knew at that point we had to be self-sustainable. And so a big focus was to answer the question, what happens when KIM leaves? How would we be able to keep the lights on? You can put it that way. And so again, together with their support, we managed to develop our sustainability strategy, which is focused around mobilizing revenue from these, I would say, 4 key areas. So when we receive projects, we are paid to review them. Yeah, a small fee. That's the first one, so project review fees. But the larger revenue is really from the placement. I mentioned that we mobilize over $100 million. Now, in our market, you have placement agents, and even the BASPs themselves act like placement agents. When they mobilize funding, they get a small percentage, maybe it's 0.5% or 1% of the money that I have raised. And so that's the same model that KEPFIC has adopted. So you can think of us as a BASP as well in terms of our functionality. Then we have the more traditional sources of revenue, which are the membership fees. So every year, our members pay something between 50,000 shillings to 150,000, depending on the size of the scheme. And finally, you have the usual trainings and capacity building sessions and conferences that we charge for attendance. Now, the results of that are that the results of having the sustainability strategy is that we were able now to, last year, to go to the market with a call for investment proposals. The more proposals we look at, the more likely the schemes will find a few that they are interested in investing in. Once they invest, we are essentially remunerated for that, and the sustainability cycle begins. Once we have some funding, we are then now able to help the schemes with their assessment. We're actually able to pay for that from our own pockets, and thus not relying as much or any more on the generosity of our donor partners, including KIM. So that's essentially our investment structure. That's our strategy. So we bring the investment opportunities to the table. You can see the green box over there. KEPFIC provides the technical and investment support to the pension schemes, to review them, to essentially learn more about the particular sectors that they're in. I mentioned that these sectors are new to them, so helping them beef up their expertise. We work with their fund managers, and their fund managers are their trusted service providers who have to provide their no-go recommendation, essentially. And then we work with co-investors, including pension schemes from abroad, but also local co-investors like insurance companies and the likes. And all this technical and investment support has been provided by our partners, USAID and the World Bank. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of, I would say, the three transactions that we call the proof of concept. So you can see we've invested in student accommodation through the Aecon REIT, we're all aware of. We've also invested in affordable housing refinancing to the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company. They had a bond last year. And we invested in a road project all the way in northern Kenya. Now, the total amount that was being sought by these project sponsors was $84 million. But through working with KEPFIC, we were actually able to mobilize more than they required. So it's about 34%, 134% of what was being sought. But the most important thing is not the number. Yeah, maybe the number is important for the project sponsor, but for us, the most important thing is the number of pension schemes that participated. 88 of them. Yeah, that tells you the breadth and the acceptance of what we are trying to achieve. 88 pension schemes have had their portfolios diversified, even in a small part, by these three opportunities. And we continue to look at more, as I will come to next. I mentioned ESG. Now, ESG is something that is critical right now. ESG being the environmental, the social, and the governance side of investments. If we even let's start at the back, start at the G, the governance. We know there are so many situations where people have invested their hard-earned money, and because of governance challenges, even the best laid out plans don't work out. Yeah? And so understanding that element of investing is really important, was really important. We know about the environmental, climate change, and the fact that some of the investments we're making today will be affected by droughts, will be affected by changes in, like we've mentioned, in the environment. So that was also very important to understand. And we look at sustainability as well. Yeah, we're very keen to ensure that because they're long-term investments, it must be able to stand the test of time. So you could have an investment opportunity that's giving you very good returns today, but if the thing is going to collapse in 10 years' time, you'll never get your money back, and at the end of the day, it would be for nothing. So Kim sponsored the Secretariat to all get ESG certified from the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. And when we looked at, and we'll come to this, when we came to inviting in proposals from the public for investment, ESG was a very key criteria for our assessment. Next slide. So onto that call for investment proposal. As you can see, we were confident enough having the proof of concept that I mentioned. We had the corporate governance in place. We had the upskilling of the team in place as well. So we were able to confidently go out to the public and invite these proposals for pension scheme investment. And these were the results. So we got 57 proposals, which we reviewed. The aggregate value was about 770 billion shillings, about $5.5 billion. And what's really interesting is that they were from across the sectors. Yeah, you can see energy, property, healthcare, affordable housing, agriculture, telecommunications and ICT, transport, water and sanitation, and as well as other being mainly like financial services. It was interesting when we saw the video of Kim. We saw that initially they were looking at agriculture, they were looking at healthcare, for example. When KEPFIC first formed, we were looking only purely at traditional infrastructure. And it's really nice that through our own development we have met. Yeah? We have been able to expand our mandate to look beyond what we were initially thinking about and really be able to match what Kim was set up to look at. Yeah, so we are a reflection of Kim's work, not just in one sector, but really across all. These investment instruments, the investment proposals, the instruments that they were looking at was initially the largest ones were equity, but there was also debt, which is basically bonds, and a mixture of both. Next slide. So those 57 opportunities were assessed over the better part of this year, and the top projects, the top opportunities were shortlisted, and they were presented at our annual conference last week. And they were presented both, in the form of presentations on the day, but also together with Kim, we put together a very high quality investment deal book, which has been circulated to the pension schemes. It has the general details of each transaction and will allow them to then now assess each project and come back to us really to help us prioritize which ones they want to look at. So we thought we would have 100 attendees, 100 pension schemes and fund manager attendees. We were very off the mark. We had 215. Yeah. So, thank you. We knew that, we hoped that there would be a good attendance. We had 130 who were there physically. Now these are 130 pension schemes. We had 85 who joined virtually over a two-day period. And those who were there will tell you that both days were fully packed. Yeah? So there was a lot of interest from day one into day two. We're very happy about that. And the shortlisted opportunities moved from the 5.5 that I showed you down to about $2.5 billion. Go to the next slide. So without going through the opportunities, I just want to highlight the size and the sector. So you have general infrastructure, which was really a catch-all. But if you look at the opportunities, you'll see there is telecommunications, in the form of Atlas Tower and Wilken Telecommunications. There is water and sanitation. There's general infrastructure through the funds, totaling about 105 billion shillings. We look at energy. Here, there are both funds as well as direct projects to invest in, and all of them clean energy at that. So you have a geothermal plant, you have a microgrid, totaling about 334 billion shillings. Next slide. Property. On property, you have not just the typical residential and office that we all know about, but we also see opportunities in logistics. So one of the opportunities is Africa Logistic Properties that are putting up warehousing in the Athi River EPZ, which is a new opportunity for pension schemes. Yeah? We have Garden City, both retail and the commercial side. Affordable housing in the form of Mivida, Keza. And of course, you have student accommodation, totaling 22 billion. In healthcare, so now we're entering areas that previously we had no idea that you could actually make money by investing in certain sectors of the economy that previously we thought were only for government. So in healthcare, we have two funds that we're looking at, the Economic Empowerment Fund and Evercare Africa, totaling, 75 billion. Maybe I'll talk about Evercare. If you have been to Avenue Hospital, that's one of the companies that Evercare has invested in. So through investing through these funds, then these funds then now invest in the likes of Nairobi Women's Hospital, Avenue, and actually are able to increase the healthcare provision in our country. Next slide. Then we have MSME-focused opportunities. Now, this has always been a challenge because we know that MSMEs are the bedrock of our economy. They hire employ 9 out of 10 employees, or 9 out of 10 workers, or 9 out of 10 of our population. And they're the growth area, of course. But they're also, it's also a very wide area of, they're in different sectors. So how can pension schemes or how could pension schemes actually take advantage and start investing in this area. We do this through, once again, through the funds. You can see there's financial inclusion that, that is an important focus. And then you have the likes of Blue Peak Capital and Zoscales that look at general SMEs. And when it comes to Seedstar Africa Ventures, this is a venture capital firm that is now looking at investing in more like startup type opportunities, totaling about 71 billion shillings. And lastly, and very importantly, agriculture. You can we've heard over the last 2 days Kim's work in the agriculture space, and we are looking to participate in that as well through investing into agriculture-focused funds. An example here is Vital Capital, looking for about 37 billion. So with that, I want to just take the last couple of minutes to really thank the Kenya Investment Mechanism team. This photo was taken last week, and it doesn't capture. First of all, it was a big moment for us. The deal book had been launched. There was a lot of excitement in the air, but this doesn't capture the entire team that has been supportive of us over the last 4 or 5 years. I truly, I'm certain we would not be here without the support that Kim have given us. And this is not monetary support. Yeah, they could have given us money and left us on our own. But there was a lot of guidance they provided. There was a lot of insight that they helped us see. And there were a lot of obstacles that they helped us navigate through. I mentioned the corporate governance and the likes. I mentioned the engagement with even government policymakers to allow us to change the regulations. Things that seem small, but when you put them together, they really add up. So I want to thank the Kim team. I might have left someone, but let me start with Roger and Waringa, to Anne, to George, who I think George and I, we probably spoke every Friday at least for about 2 years when he was putting together his Kim sites. I think there was a time for 2 years, Kim sites had an article or a section on KEPFIC, every week. I want to thank Bernard for his support as well, to Jeff, to Veronica, and to the rest of the team within Kim and the Palladium group that supported us. And on the USAID side, obviously we would not be here without the support of Matt, with Corey, Benson, Alex, who were very, very influential in ensuring that KEPFIC got the support that we needed, that paths were cleared to make sure that we stuck to our mission. We didn't have to start thinking about unnecessary challenges to resolve. Yeah, we were able to escalate any challenges we had. We were able to get them to support in unlocking a lot of even opportunities for us. I mentioned that at our launch, we had the US ambassador who came to speak. Now that's no small matter, yeah, especially for an untested, new initiative. And that would not have been possible without the support of the team that I've just mentioned. And from that alone opened a lot of doors. It gave us a sense of, gave us a lot of credibility. It gave the market a lot of confidence in us. And to this day, we continue to benefit from that. So once again, I just want to thank you so much to the Kim team. I want to thank you for hosting us today. I want to thank you for the last 4.5 years of your support. And we look forward to you seeing how KEPFIC continues to grow and continues to achieve the promises that we made all the way back in 2019. Thank you, everybody.
While making a really big contribution to economic development. So thank you so much once again, Gatia. All right, we are now coming towards the close of our closeout event. And I would like to welcome Lauren Rawlings. Lauren is the Country Director, Ethiopia for USAID Catalyze Market Systems for Growth and Palladium's Senior Technical Advisor, finance, and investment. Lauren provides technical and management leadership for a multi-year USAID-funded economic transformation activity in Ethiopia. The activity is designed to provide private enterprises the finance, advice, skills, and market linkages required to contribute to improved food security and WASH outcomes. Let's give Lauren a warm round of applause.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today for USAID's Kenya Investment Mechanism celebration of 5 years of partnership-driven results. As Terry-Ann has said, I'm Loren Rawlings, a senior technical advisor at Palladium. And over the last 3 years, I've had the privilege and the pleasure of working with the Kim team and many of our partners. Partly inspired by our work here, I recently took on the challenge of leading a USAID-funded private sector transformation project in Ethiopia. So now I'm just up the road instead of in DC. And my job in Ethiopia is much easier, not easy, but easier, because of what I've learned and observed here with the Kenya Investment Mechanism. The unifying theme of the last 2 days has been the power of partnerships. And it's been immensely gratifying to hear the Kim team, USAID, our financial institution partners, our BAS partners, and most importantly, the SMEs reflect on what we've accomplished together. But as we close out the project, it's most exciting to listen to the commitment to continued, enduring partnership. And that these collaborations are rooted in relationships between people as well as coordination across organizations. And those are both very important. So we started the event yesterday with a conversation between two people, between Roger from the Kim team and Benson at USAID. And it was clear that they'd built quite a personal rapport over the time working together. And it was the trust and the open communication that set the stage for the kinds of partnership results that Kim has been able to drive. You might also recall that one of the participants in the Women's Investment Readiness Program, Virginia, reflected on the fact that entrepreneurship can be lonely, and that the cohort approach we used enabled her to find, right, a network of friends who understood the journey that she was on, as well as potential collaborators and a support network. Edna from Afroscope also mentioned the fact that during one of our networking events, right, that they came together, two BASPs were able to come together and put together a deal for one of our SMEs, right? So these personal relationships really are important as the foundation or so the center of partnerships. But more institutionally, I know many of us were pleased to hear that the BASPs and the banks are committed to continuing to work together. And the collaboration between these business advisors and financial institutions is helping to bridge the gap between the supply and demand of SME credit. With Kim's help, BAS have gotten to understand exactly what different banks are looking for in terms of what they need in application packages, but also the different sectors and business models that interest the different banks. And also the banks got to understand the expertise that the BASPs bring, partners in building profitable pipeline and profitable clients. Another partnership driving SME access to finance is National Treasury's Credit Guarantee Scheme, which is grounded in partnership between the government and the private sector, right? And the government plays its role in putting together some funding and developing some guidelines, but it's the financial institutions that use their own processes, and policies for making lending decisions. So each of those partners understands its role, and together they're helping to unlock finance for SMEs. Thinking about the public sector, rather, we can go down to looking at what's happening at the counties. And Elizabeth, who's a great ambassador for Kakamega County, one of the things she talked about was the importance of, even within the county government, right, the coordination, putting together a one-stop shop so that investors aren't running from pillar to post when they want to invest in Kakamega, right? That even within the county government, that kind of collaboration is critical and is part of what helped make them an interesting destination, an attractive destination for region organics, right? In addition, we heard that the different counties were learning from each other right on the stage yesterday. We heard that Isiolo and Mombasa and Kakamega exchanging some ideas. And we hope to see that continue so they learn from each other and can be happy, friendly competitors and learning partners. Great. Kim's Women's Economic Empowerment Team has been absolutely phenomenal in thinking about partnership and driving partnership. The work that that team put together to co-create this investor readiness program for women-led SMEs was done in partnership with a venerable local organization, with Strathmore, right? Very often we see development projects that make kind of projectized assistance, right? We hire some coaches, we hire some consultants, we provide the training for a few cohorts, and that's it. But by embedding that partner, by making a partnership that embedded the program in Strathmore, in addition to the 3 cohorts of women that benefited from this, Kim has left a legacy of this program that will serve women and other entrepreneurs well beyond the end of Kim. Today, our keynote speaker from the USAID Regional Mission, the Deputy Mission Director, reminded us of USAID's mission to support inclusive Kenyan-led development. And that USAID and all of USAID's activities are to be partners in fostering that locally led development. And that can only be done in partnerships. And so how we do our work is as important as the work we do. And Kim has therefore focused on approaches that forge partnerships, connecting Kenyan organizations to each other, and decentering the project as a platform for organizations of Kenyans to come together to help each other. And actually, I thought I had all this figured out, but Ngati's presentation on KEPFIC was a perfect example of that, right? So that KEPFIC was founded initially with, 5 like-minded pension funds, with the support for capacity building from Kenya Investment Mechanism. They grew to more than double, almost triple, the number of pension schemes that joined KEPFIC because they could see an organization with capacity. And as we just announced, they have now a strong foundation to be a sustainable, locally led consortium. And that's the kind of development and kind of results that we're really looking for. The $630 million mobilized by Kim is absolutely impressive. But what's more impressive, right, the results behind the numbers, the way Kim has worked to create a financial ecosystem, a business ecosystem that can continue and build on and increase those results. That's the lasting impact, right? It's one thing over 5 years to mobilize in a certain amount of capital. It's another thing to help shift the way the ecosystem works so that those kind of results can be accelerated and increased over time. So all of us who've had even a small role in Kim are excited to see how Kenyan partnerships take this work forward to achieve even greater results. As I said, the $630 million, again, great number, but that number is just a start. We know that working together you can do even more. So you may have heard the adage, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. So I'm very proud to have been, like I said, a small part of what the Kenya Investment Mechanism team has done together with county governments and the national government, with SMEs, with the real sector, the financial sector, and advisors to be part of building a foundation for a Kenyan-led future that brings prosperity to all Kenyan people. So thank you very much for letting me be a small part of this. We can now go together to lunch.
USAID's Kenya Investment Mechanism has been connecting business opportunities with financing. We created a network of 42 business advisory service providers who we incentivize to help enterprises access financing. We also worked with 22 local financial institutions, providing incentives to serve SMEs. We also support
who have made our event absolutely flawless. I think we need to give them another warm round of applause. And to each and everyone who made time to be here today, thank you all so much. Enjoy your lunch. Remember to pick a voucher on your way out. As an MC, I want to thank you as well for being an incredible audience once again. My name is Terry Ann Chebet, and it's been an absolute pleasure to be part of this conversation. Asante and God bless.
USAID's Kenya Investment Mechanism has been connecting business opportunities with financing. We created a network of 42 business advisory service providers who we incentivize to help enterprises access financing. We also worked with 22 local financial institutions, providing incentives to serve SMEs. We also supported them with new financing products that better fit the cash collection cycles of businesses. Additionally, we deepened their understanding of the importance of value chain financing. By mid-July 2023, USAID's Kenya Investment Mechanism had mobilized over $636 million in finance and investment for enterprises, way above the target of $520 million. This capital supported close to 9 million smallholders and 450 SMEs. Our pool of business advisory service providers mobilized over $293 million, while financial institutions mobilized over $330